So who was exactly responsible for the 49ers' defensive resurgence this year? Was it Robert Saleh or was it the roster? You know, a lot of people were giving Robert Saleh a ton of credit, and they were saying he was going to be a potential head coach next year. And then something started to happen. Injuries. Injuries started to pick away at the roster. Injuries started to pick away at the depth. Losing guys like Ronald Blair for the season and DJ Jones, or someone like D Ford not in the rotation. And now you're starting to see the cracks. If Robert Saleh was everything that everybody said he was early on, he should be able to adjust, right? I mean, that's the $64,000 question that everybody wants to know. I'll be honest with you. Before this season, I never was a big fan of Robert Saleh. And I know that sounds really fitting now because they're struggling and it sounds like, I'm just overreacting. But I wasn't a big fan of his coming into this year. And I was interested to see what he would do with some chess pieces in his arsenal. And he did well. But they were loaded to start the season. Little by little, that depth was picked away. And guys are now having to play a ton of snaps, and it's showing. And I haven't seen a defensive genius come up with an alternative game plan or play calls to make up for the lack of depth in players that he has in his rotation. Instead, I'm seeing someone who's running the exact same plays, the same vanilla coverages, and not adapting to what he doesn't have. And for me, I feel like now I know why I felt the way that I did before the season. And it's starting to show and rear its ugly head at the worst time possible. Right at the end of the season, right when we need the defense to be sharp going into the playoffs. And, I really, really thought that they would find a way to overcome their lack of players. And they would find a way to adjust their coverages and maybe blitz more, to make up for the lack of what they don't have. And I've seen none of that. I mean, look at the Atlanta game. You have one guy beating you the whole game, and you make zero adjustments to stop it. Coach Shanahan said that they did bracket coverage, and they bracket coverage Julio Jones. I didn't see that. There's no way. Nothing was ever adjusted to compensate for the lack of what they didn't have during that game. And it's infuriating. I mean, you look at the Saints game before that, and that was a blip because of who they were facing, but they didn't get home either with the rush, and their coverage on the back end was just horrendous. And if you want to go back a game before that with Baltimore, they have a horrible time dealing with mobile quarterbacks in the option game. I mean, just horrible. It's like they don't know what's coming, even though it's the same thing every time. And it's really infuriating to watch. I mean, if you look when we played the Cardinals, we had a hard time with that too. We did a pretty good job against Russell Wilson, but still, I don't see with Robert Saleh someone who is able to adjust and come up with, solutions. I see a person who was the beneficiary of a really good roster being exposed for what he really is, and that's a pretty good defensive coordinator, but nothing great. It'll be interesting to see what they do in the offseason if their defense ends up being what cost them, or are they just going to go with the excuse that, they didn't have their players and, the other team just played better and yada, yada, yada. I'll be honest, the offense didn't have a great game against Atlanta, but that happens. The other team gets paid too, and they are very, very, they know about Kyle Shanahan because he was the offensive coordinator for that team. So the head coach has a lot of knowledge about what Kyle likes to run. So I'm not surprised at how their defense played our offense. That being said, they're a 4-win team. Yeah, they have some talent, but really they only had one big piece that they were attacking us with, and we consistently had zero answers for it, and that's just infuriating. It'll be interesting to see going forward what they do And if they can overcome this, otherwise it might be a quick exit to the playoffs. Who knows? All right, that's my venting for the day. That's going to do it for me. I'll talk to everybody later. See ya.